We will get started. We'll call the meeting to order. Can I get a motion for the approval of the August 29th minutes? Got Rob and Brandy, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? All right. For those of you who were here during our operations meeting, we do have a quick change here. We had voted in operations to take PCAPS and move it over to public safety. It was just erroneously placed in their budget pages, so I will need a motion to add PCAPS. Okay, we'll get the budget up. Okay, Brian's on. That's what she was asking. Yep. And then we had Steve as a second. All right, now that we have that, we will try to get, or need a motion to get PCAPS added to our public safety budget pages. Danny and Brandy, thank you. And a vote. All in favor? Opposed? All right. I'll turn over to Scott for our budget presentation.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Hasn't everybody heard this already, or not? Or is it, I mean, not that it matters, but it's not that I don't want to hear you again, but I think everybody's heard it, haven't they?
Probably everyone has heard it. Maybe we'll just skip ahead to what this committee has oversight of. How's about that? All right. As is evidenced in your books, just a couple of quick things. So you should have at your tables, and this is not yet updated on the iPad, so don't refresh your iPad for this, but at your tables you should have some replacement pages for your committee. There is updated first couple of pages that will now include PCAPS in the totals. And then there's some updates to JDC, which you have, if you have specific questions about what those updates are, Heather would be more than happy to talk to them. And then lastly, adding the pages related to PCAPS. So those are what was on your desks in front of you. Now then, let's talk about what actually this committee has jurisdiction of. By number of budgets and by money, it's a very large budget. It's $27.5 million in revenues and $56.4 million in expenditures. For the entire organizational budget, that's 18% of the revenue and 36% of the expenses. We've already talked about at a high level what the general fund looks like. In terms of what this committee has oversight of in the general fund, it's a quarter of the revenues and 68% of the expense. So pretty high level, a very quick summary. Just a note of thanks and appreciation, Madam Chair, to all the appointed and elected officials that report to this committee and the work that they did to get us this far as in the budget process. Additionally, thanks to Heather and the finance team, as everyone's heard me say at least once today, if not every committee thus far, we had new finance software this year, which was a heavy lift in and of itself. And then on top of that, we moved away from using Word and Excel to create the budget book into an online-based platform that had its challenges in and of itself. But we've got several process improvements to implement for next year. So with that, we are happy to answer any questions. I know, Madam Chair, you had a question about ETSB, and if you want me to just tackle that right off the top, I'm happy to do that, or if you want to ask it, and then I can tackle it. Your choice.
There is obviously a noticeably large increase there, and since we had such a long discussion on it, if you could share that with the committee, that would be great.
Happy to do that. So the ETSB starts on page 136 of the 10 pages, so if anybody that wants to follow along. What you're seeing is a pretty substantial increase to the tune of $5 million in the expenditures for FY24, that being the change between the current year and next year. That's due to a couple of different things. First and foremost, it's an intended and planned use of fund balance in this department or in this fund to tackle a microwave project related to the radio systems that all the first responders in Peoria County use. Secondly, there's going to be some money associated with and a corresponding revenue associated with the Stark County project as well. Those two things make up the overwhelming lion's share of what that is. So those are one-time projects that are going to be shown in the FY24 budget, and there may be residual as those projects wind down at the end of 24 that might have to be rolled over into 25. But again, those are one-time projects, and I'm sure if he's here, Mr. Tuttle, Jody would be able to explain those in greater detail if the committee has any further questions.
Did you have a question, Rob?
I do have a question about this part of the budget, if we can move on, in addition to what we just mentioned. One of it was on page 38. For uses, we have a debt service expense that went up by almost $1 million. And is it due to that or the debt interest that's listed on 141?
So the difference between 138 and 141, what's on 141 is the detail of what is shown there, and so those things should add up to be what the number is. That is a debt service payment that's tied to the lease, if I remember correctly, for the radio system. So again, it's not a one-time use; it's a planned expense as we make those debt service payments on the radio system that we had previously issued and the board had approved as a debt structure, a lease structured debt.
So we're paying interest off, correct? We are
So-
paying interest on.
Right, because it was a debt issuance, so there's going to be a principal payment and an interest payment.
So I guess my question then is on page 37, or 137, I guess it's 137. Even with using, a lot of our fund balance, we still have over $4 million in the fund balance, which is 29% above our policy. Why wouldn't we use some of the fund balance to pay off that debt?
We are actually, the FY24 payment is the final payment. So it is being paid off in 24.
Not by the fund balance? No.
No, the money that's recommended in the FY24 budget will be the final payment. And they're actually, if memory serves correctly, and Jody, correct me if I'm wrong, they're actually paying it off early. So we'll have an interest savings over time. And then going forward, starting at FY25, that debt service payment will not be there.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, did you have a question?
I have two, kind of a higher level under the judicial court. There's court administration expenditures have gone up 16.8%, and then the public defender has gone up 22%. So if somebody could, at a high level, address kind of the delta changes that are happening in court administration, and then second, public defender, whoever would like to answer that first.
So I'll make an attempt at that, and then I'll turn it over to the courts and the public defender. My comments will be more appropriate for the public defender. So, public defender, we continue along the path of bringing those services in-house. The original plan had been to kind of see a one-for-one in terms of as we add a dollar in expense, we decrease a dollar in contracted services. For the first couple of years, that worked pretty well, but as costs have increased, but we have set contracts with set fees for the contracted attorneys, but some of our wage costs have increased, then that really has not kept pace. But what this budget does is it does continue that trend where we're continuing to bring in-house assistant public defenders and trying to reduce as much as possible our reliance on contracted assistant public defenders. Are we ever going to be 100% there? Probably not, but that's maybe a question better answered by Mr. Lowe. And then, I would ask either Heather or one of the team from court administration to kind of give a little bit of an explanation as to the background behind their increase.
Do you want to come up? Do you have anything to add? Yes, I'm sorry.
I can try to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, no worries. No worries. I'm used to that. No problem. So I guess, in essence, the question is, why has the request for, as far as our budget request, increased at 22% mark? There's a couple of things that work here when I went through the budgeting process. Of course, I'm new to the process, as everybody knows. I took over in February, at the end of February, and when I looked at the budget, one of the first things I noticed was that the people that we've had under contract for a very long time who have provided us services had not received any type of increase in their contracts for 5 to 6 years, and that's despite a cost of living increase of approximately 20 to 22% during that corresponding period. So one of my objectives in this very tight legal climate was that, in one of the objectives is we cannot afford to lose people. I decided it would be appropriate to boost some of these contracts to adjust the cost of living. So in my request to the board, I've built that in, and that's under the independent contractor side. All right, so that side went up pretty significantly because I plan to do that, increase those contracts to retain personnel. Again, I'm frightened of losing people in this very tight legal climate. The second thing at work is maybe the other side of that, which is our full-time people. And right now we have 6 full-time attorneys. We have 2 administration. So Kristen Collins, who is our office manager, and we recently hired a receptionist as well. The idea being here is that we are also, at the same time, we have these existing contracts for independent contractors. We also are a growing organization, and what Scott was mentioning, that we're trying to move more and more towards a full-time model. But in the meantime, as we make that transition, well, right now in this climate, we don't have full-time people to hire. We have a budget for it, but we've been unsuccessful in actually finding people at the skill level that we need, or just anybody actually to hire. And so I think what's going on here with the budget request is that I requested funds not only for a COLA, the increase there, but also sufficient funds so that if we find the people, we'll be able to hire them. Now, do I anticipate we'd actually use that entire budget that we requested? I doubt very much, but and I think this would be very much a one-time large increase that we were asking for. So I hope that answers the question.
I think so. I mean, at a high level, Mr. Sorrell made the comment of when we made the agreement, probably back in 2017, to start transitioning from outsourcing public defender service to insourcing it, and there was a lot of good reasons. Our overall objective was we'd provide better service to our clients by having it in-house, and our costs would be essential neutral, somewhere in that ballpark. I know during the transition there's some challenges because you have contracts with suppliers to balance along with bringing on new people. But the challenge here is you bring in new staff on, in-house staff. I would expect to see some of the contracts for outsourcing to decline, equivalently. Exactly how much, I'm not the expert in that space, but you're trading one for the other, so there should be a reduction in outsourcing contract dollars. And I don't know if that's actual dollars or if that's budgeted dollars, but I don't know if you follow where I'm going.
Absolutely, and that's the long-term goal. Unfortunately, I found in the short term, and once again, I think this relates to the actual legal market out there and the very tight legal climate that we have. We've been unable to find the full-time personnel at this point, and unfortunately, the trend is going in the opposite direction. We've been able to find part-time independent contractors. We've been able to find attorneys who are willing to do some work for us on a limited contractual basis. So we've actually had to add more of those, which I've done this past month, because we just need the people.
Okay.
And we haven't been able to find the full-time people. But as we find additional full-time people, I fully anticipate that the other part of that equation, the contractual services, will be reduced. And consistent with the original plan, I think that the county board signed it.
Okay.
As this progresses, do you want to report back? I know you've been coming to do monthly reports, but maybe keep us posted on how that recruitment and progress is going.
Absolutely. And of course, I report to everyone here once per month. So, or at least, but if you need something sooner than that, I can certainly. Okay. But I'll certainly keep you updated on the latest developments. And I don't know if do we want me to speak again later in the hearing, or should I just conclude all my remarks right now to the committee?
Probably keep going on the budget matter.
Okay.
And then call you back up.
Great.
And then same question for Gabe, if you want to come up.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the question was pertaining to the increase in court administration expenditures on page 90. So,
Correct.
is that correct?
It was,
Okay.
it was the overall, the summary was a 16.8% expenditure increase. And just for transparency, give us kind of a high level, what's changing to drive that?
Sure. So court administration is broken down between adult probation, court administration, jury, and juvenile probation. So in that table, juvenile probation expenses will increase about $600,000. That's primarily due to a new grant that the juvenile probation department was able to obtain to provide more services to their juvenile probationers. So that $600,000 increase is the driver for the overall increase in court administration expenses. And that is a reimbursement grant. So if you look above in the revenue section, there's a similar increase to juvenile probation. That grant is a total of about $400,000. So you'll see that as an increase in revenues also. So those should offset each other. Yeah, page 90 of the PS&J section.
No, that's a good explanation on justifying why the expenses are going up, because you have a grant on the other side coming on the revenue to offset
Correct.
the majority of it.
Yes.
Okay. Any other significant topics besides that one?
No, everything
Okay.
else is pretty much consistent from 2023.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions about any portion that we haven't discussed? Oh, yes, Rob.
Thank you. My question is on the 10th Judicial Circuit, so page 94, 95, 96. I believe I know the answer to this just because the the circuit covers more than one county, so we might get revenue or expenditures, but it's the first time I think have seen a line item for maintenance, repair, and buildings and grounds. And if that's an expenditure, as a county, do we see that as a revenue somewhere else?
So that is, that line item is specific to just our building and our county. So there's no specific revenue offset. There are some improvements the courts want to make that don't qualify under the board's financial policies as a capital improvement project that these dollars are going to fund. That'll directly impact courtrooms here in the courthouse. I'm sure Gabe could give you a little bit more detail on what that might be if you were looking for it.
I guess I'm just confused why it's spread out into 3 different line items. So I guess maybe some clarification, because there's a 15,000, a 30,000, and a 60,000.
So it's a function of, I'm actually going to look to Heather on this, but it's really a function of just how the new chart of accounts divides things up.
While she's coming up, so then this would be considered capital improvements?
So they are capital improvement projects, but they don't meet the threshold for them to be classified as capital under your financial policies and therefore paid from the capital budget. So we've got in the fixed asset and financial policies, there's thresholds for what a fixed asset can be, and if it's below that number, then it should not be paid from the capital project fund. It should come out of the departmental budget.
And am I correct that this is the only area in the budget that you see these line items?
This year, this is probably, you might see it here, you may or may not see it in the sheriff's office general fund budget. Usually the offices that have large budgets and have occupied large square footprints and might have the resources to do so, and they might ask to, like, an example might be carpet and paint that we would want to put that in the departmental budget versus putting that in the facilities operating budget. And again, it doesn't meet the threshold to qualify as a capital project, depending on exactly how big the project might be. This being an example where it does not meet that threshold.
You want to expand on that, Heather?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the reason it's split up into different sections within their budget is they're split into different programs. So there may be a fee or a charge for that under court administration, under adult probation, because it's different areas of those departments that we're doing the work within. And so it's more of an accounting function, how the charges that are being assessed to the adult probation program are going to be outlined there, and then directly to court administration are in that section of the budget. So it's kind of an accounting function, if that helps. And it's for painting and carpet and different areas, kind of refreshing things that are out of date and need some updating.
Does that answer your question? Yes, Steve.
Yeah, I'll just make a general comment. I've recently spent some time with the courts, and they do have some facility needs, carpet, various things. So I understand this is probably really tiny numbers from what they really do need. We had a few courtrooms due to water damage that got improved and updated, but our courtrooms in general, we have some that are, I would say, almost embarrassing if you walk in and as a general public to be there for court. So there's probably some effort that more of a higher level facilities standpoint that we need to put on our schedule going forward as to prioritize. And again, we have a facilities person now that we brought on board to help us prioritize, but I at least want to make note that there is a definite need to improve courts.
Absolutely. Any other notes? Yes, Sharon.
Just a comment on that, we are going to be updating our facilities master plan, so that's probably going to be part of that.
All right, going through your budget notes, anyone else have questions? All right. Well, we will stay pretty close to being on track then. We will, let's see. What's that? Yes. But we need to, let's see, get a motion to adopt our public safety budget with the addition of PCAPs. Can I get a motion?
I think you're good on that, because we brought it to the floor and you added PCAP, so now I think you can just call.
I thought you said we needed to add it.
You did that first.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Can I get a vote? Let's see, all in favor? Opposed? All right.
Madam Chairman, I do need to leave, but I just wanted to say, this picture on the front, we should just tell everyone in the community, why would you want to go to Colorado?
Up here?
Yeah,
Oh,
why do you need to go to Colorado?
that's right. I'm thinking, what picture? Thank you. Right. We will move on to our informational items. We've got our circuit clerk. Do we have a report from the circuit clerk today? We'll move on. We've got.
Jamie has my report, I think.
I see you, Jamie. Do you want to come up?
So about the circuit clerk's office. How big is your office, Bobby? Just curious. I don't really have anything new to report out of the coroner's office, other than I know there was some communication, maybe at the last meeting, the one before, about my FTE status. And I would like to echo the public defender about the difficulty it is to keep and maintain qualified people. And when we talk about servicing people in Peoria and Peoria County, we want qualified people to do their death investigation if and when the time comes. So we have met our threshold for FTEs now with part-time people, which is good because they're qualified. In fact, we're under right now. It's going to take some training for the remaining part of the year, but we've been able to recruit and get some really qualified people to continue the mission in our office. So that's all I got to say. If anybody have any questions.
Any questions for Jamie? No questions? All right, thank you. We'll move on to ETSB then.
Hello. Not much to report. I'll echo the same thing. We're still working on Stark County. Hopefully by the end of October, we will have the building closed up. The roof is on, the shingles are on, the walls are up, but so we're hoping to have that closed up by Halloween is what they're telling us. So hopefully we're figuring second or third quarter of 2024, we should have Stark County up and running is the goal.
Okay, still a ways out.
Well, still a ways out, but yeah, we got some things that are lead times are going to be a little bit iffy, so we've been going and then we're going to come to like a stall waiting on things to come in.
Oh,
So the PSAPs are running fine, no issues there. Everything's going great. Any questions?
great. No questions. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our
I will say that the budget did go a lot smoother this year, especially in my department. I think Scott and his team did a good job. They make a lot of cuts in my area, which I appreciate that. There wasn't a lot of back talk, so thank you to everybody. He didn't hear me cuss anybody out. I walked in the room, I was outnumbered by 20 people to 1, and I got those even odds.
all right, do you want to proceed with the PCAPS report?
All right, just one thing to add for PCAPS. Our mobile spay neuter vehicle is in production. I've been in touch with those folks about once a week, getting updates, and they're asking for little things like sending me pictures of flooring and saying, what do you prefer, which is very exciting. So we know we're in production. They have all the wiring done. It's moving along. They are expected to have it delivered by the end of October.
And our public defender report. I'm sorry, did anybody have questions for Becky? Okay. Yes. Is there anything you want to add that we haven't discussed?
All right, so I did want to provide an update about our new offices. We're very, very excited about our new offices. I keep reiterating every month, and we greatly appreciate your support, greatly. Remember last month when I sat here and talked about the new office, I was 99.9% certain that by this time, this month, we'd be in that office. Unfortunately, we're not. And the adjusted timeline right now, and I just talked to Calvin in building maintenance, and he said it's probably best case scenario 2 weeks, worst case scenario 30 more days. So between 2 weeks to 30 days we'll be in the new office. He said there were certain little just finish up things that had to be done. The painting had to be touched up, which was done. Apparently the electrician needs to come back and add some additional wiring to my office specifically, my little office in there. There is a thermostat that still needs to be installed, and something called a test and balance procedure that has something to do with the AC and the heating. I guess equalizing the relative heating zones or something. That still has to be done. So that's the update for the office, and we're still very excited. Thank you. As far as staffing, as I mentioned during the budget portion of this, we've been, once again, unsuccessful in adding new full-time people. Very bad market right now for legal services. The climate's very tight. We did add a couple of additional independent contractors, perhaps going in the wrong direction from the board's perspective, but eventually it'll turn around. It will as the market ebbs and flows, as all things always do. But the two additional attorneys that we added at this point would be one to handle appellate work from our juvenile abuse and neglect cases. In case the board is unfamiliar with that, we have to handle our own appeals in the juvenile and abuse cases. And that's, people call it DCFS court. But once there's an adverse ruling to a parent, we cannot then do a notice of appeal and have the appellate defender's office handle that. For some reason, we have to handle it in-house. And it becomes very burdensome for a lot of our already existing attorneys, and it becomes very difficult. So we've contracted out that service. And then we have one other additional person that has come in to help us in conflict of interest cases in that same courtroom, because they're in those types of cases involving various parents and other organizations, there oftentimes can be conflict of interest with the attorneys representing different individuals. So we have, although we added a full-time person in that courtroom several months ago, we brought the full number of attorneys down from 5 to 4. We got rid of one of the independent contractors, and unfortunately that's created some conflicts of interest. So short term, I've added a person back in just to handle a small number of conflict cases. So right now, as we stand today, we have 21 total attorneys, 6 are full-time, 15 independent contractors, and then with 2 administrative staff. And then finally, also last month, I had talked to you about, we hired our first assistant, Rachel Roth. Rachel Roth is with me today. I wanted to bring her up here just so I can introduce her to everybody, because we are so excited about having her aboard. And I know I talked her up last month, but Rachel, if you'd just like to introduce yourself real quick and maybe provide a little bit about your background for everyone.
Hi, my name is Rachel Roth. I've been with the office since March. I am essentially a lifelong public defender. I spent the majority of my time in McLean County. And one thing that I'm excited about is the support of the board and the county in general to build this office, to have full-time attorneys, to have appropriate, proper, and essentially great representation of the members of the community, which I think is so important, and it's also inspiring to know that we have your support. So thank you very much. It's nice to meet all of you.
welcome aboard.
Any questions?
I don't have any. No questions.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you. All right, do we have any public comment? Miscellaneous? Yes.
I guess under miscellaneous, we're, 8 days into the new Safety Act change. Maybe it's appropriate to ask either the state's attorney or the sheriff, just to give us an update how their operations are moving forward, and, just give us a brief update. I don't know if the state's attorney or the sheriff want to provide just an overview to make us aware, or both.
So this is an on-the-spot update, but maybe you could prepare an update for next month?
They're always prepared.
Yeah.
Went into effect. From our perspective, I think, I actually did a radio interview on this morning. It's gone pretty seamless, really. And I think a large part of that is due to the meetings that we had leading up to it, even back last fall, excuse me, when we thought that it would be going into effect in January. The sheriff, myself, Mr. Lowe, the public defender, the chief judge, the clerk's office, probation, we were meeting regularly to discuss how is it going to impact each of our offices and what's our plan and how are we going to roll this out. And I think that helped in a lot of ways. Like any new law, there's always a hiccup or something that comes up or some new scenario that we hadn't thought of. But Mr. Lowe and myself obviously have a good relationship, and we were able to talk through any of those first bumps in the road. But from our perspective, I think it's gone as well as it could.
Yeah, for operations wise, it hasn't been too bad. It's very soon. Still 8 days is very early into this. I think there's still wrinkles that are being worked out. I'm seeing other counties. We haven't had those gray area cases yet that I've seen where we saw DuPage County State's Attorney yesterday they had somebody that was on probation for a violent crime who then broke into a retail store and stole $60,000 worth of jewelry. And the state's attorney filed the petition to detain, and the judge let him go. So we haven't seen that yet locally. So it'll be very curious when we see those types of, whereas the public, I think we want to see those people get detained, right? It's where the legislation is kind of given, you're going to see different counties, different judges rule differently on those. So we haven't had those type of cases yet that I'm aware of. My population did go down a little bit, but a lot of that had to do with people getting sentenced to DOC last week. So I haven't really seen a true impact on what our jail population will look like. It's just too soon.
Like I said, maybe if you could both report back next month, you'll have a little more substance to go on and in terms of what it looks like from your perspective.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
We like joint reports. We'll bring the coroner in next time.
Anything else for miscellaneous? All right, well, I would like to compliment everyone. Obviously, this is a big budget area and my first time being involved in any of these meetings, but from my perspective, it seemed to go smoothly, and Bobby's too, apparently. So kudos to everyone involved. It was impressive. But if there's nothing else, then we'll adjourn.